Hi, good morning. I'm Anthony, that's Ray, as you guys heard. We weren't entirely sure everyone's backgrounds, experiences in intellectual property. Everybody knows that patents are very necessary in the med tech world. So what we did was we put together a quick presentation just to give ideas of protecting the core technologies and the branding and all of that sort of thing. So we're going to dive right in. It'll be pretty quickly paced, like was said, this afternoon we have an Ask the IP section in the break room that we can get into nitty-gritty questions if you guys have any. Okay, because we're lawyers, we have the typical disclaimer. There you go. Yep. All right. Okay, so the types of IP. Everybody hears IP. Most people think patents, but it actually is copyrights, trademarks, patents, and trade secrets. They all protect different things. They're all independently acquired. However, for the most part, we try to encourage people to pursue different avenues of protection because they all work together, as you guys will see. So copyrights protect creative works, advertising, brochures, packagings, those sorts of things. Trademarks protect identities of the sources of the products. Patents protect the useful, knowledgeable invention, and that's kind of where everybody knows about. And then trade secrets protect commercial knowledge, things that you wouldn't necessarily want to publicize. Types of patents. So down the middle here are the three columns. We created columns. There's utility, design, and plants. Utility patents are typically what you think of as when everyone thinks of a patent. So that protects devices, methods, any kind of commercial embodiments. Designs protect the actual ornamental visual appearance of a certain device. So if you're making an implant of some sort, that's the way it looks. If you want to protect it as compared to your competitors, that would be a design patent. And then plants, everybody, if you asexually reproduce a new strain of whatever it is, we can protect plant patents as well. Just for everybody's edification, the top here is a fluid flow control valve that one of Ray's clients. Stent down here. In the middle is a nice barbecue beverage dispenser that I'm waiting for my client to actually produce, which would be nice. And then we have the remote controls and a couple of nice plants for everybody to see. Okay, so that brings us to our first case study on how different patents can work together. This is one of Ray's clients. Do you want to talk about it or go back and forth a little? Yeah. Because we actually have it where I'll do the beginning and then he was going to do the end, and so we'll kind of, I guess, I don't know. So the inventor is an artsy kind of guy, and he came up with an idea and contacted Ray before I met Ray about a sandal that doesn't allow the feet to get sandy when walking in the beach. So on the left, he pursued a utility patent, and we actually got it. Go figure. Well, he's the can-do guy, so he got the patent. And then on the right, he also got a design patent on the way the sandal looks. So the sandal has a removable filter that kind of sloughs the sand off the feet and lets it escape out the sides. Who would have thought? But it was patentable. Let's see, protecting trademarks and trade dress. Like I said, we're kind of moving kind of fast because we're covering about a semester and a half worth of information in 20 minutes. So we have trademarks. Trademarks are words, names, symbols, devices used, and they are intended to brand yourself, to denote in the mind of the consumer where the product came from, the origination. That's what trademarks are for. Trade dress. These are characteristics of visual appearance. So if you have a product line and they all tend to look the same to distinguish yourself from your competitors, that's more of a trade dress, also protectable under the trademark laws. Policy basis, like I said, I keep saying it's to denote in the consumer's mind where the product came from. And at the bottom we have several famous trademarks, the Coke bottle on the right there, that's any product derived from the Coke company used to come in those shaped bottles. Pink, the Pink Panther, Owens Corning, they were the first to think about, one of the first few that actually trademarked a color, pink insulation for the housing, for residential housing, and commercial actually. And then the two tigers there was actually a big fight between Kellogg and Exxon back in the 70s. They had put a little tiger in your tank, and that was okay because they were just selling gas, but as soon as they entered the breakfast food industry and the AM/PM type mini marts, Kellogg stepped in and said, that's a big no-no. And phrases, help, I've fallen, but I can't get up. Everybody's heard that commercial. Those are all trademarked. Okay, so we have a second case study. Here we have, this is another one of Ray's clients, a wireless button for devices. So on the left, he pursued the design patent, and actually, Ray, why don't you give him a little more?
So I had a client come to me, and you know, he had a button, and Ray, you know, you've gotten lots of patents for me. I have this new button. That's great. What's it look like? Well, it looks like a button. So I think there could be some utility patent issues with it. So we decided to try to go for a design. Designs are a lot easier to get through the USPTO. Like Anthony mentioned, they're pretty much directed to what something looks like. So it could be the shapes. So it's the ornamental configuration of the device. It did not look exactly like any other button I had seen. So you know, we'll go for it. And again, this is an electronics device. We were able to get the design patent on the button, but the problem is with design patents, well, they're easy to get, but they're often narrowly construed because they're pretty much picture patents. So what it looks like, that's what your protection is. The challenge with something like this is that, you know, there can be some variations to it. So you know, it could be that someone has a disc-like button, and maybe they have instead of one depression in the middle, maybe they have 4 or 5 things around the circle. So you know, we're looking at ways you could expand the scope of this. So what we did is we decided to file for a trademark registration on the trade dress, or what the device looks like. So filing something like that, it's a bit tricky with the trademark office, because if you submit something that is essentially looks like a button to them, they said this is entirely functional. But by pursuing the design patent first, we were able to counter a lot of the arguments with the trademark office to say that there actually is ornamentation to this device, and ultimately we were able to also get the trademark. The cool thing about this, other than it's a very cool button, is that you know, the term of design patents is only 15 years now, but trademarks can go on and on. You have to fulfill some requirements over time, submitting statements of use and things like that, but they can continue to go. So by getting the patent protection a little bit early, we've got, even though the scope is a bit narrow, we could hopefully keep some competitors out of the market, and while we acquire distinctiveness over time, and the public begins to associate this particular device with this particular company, and then, you know, from then on you can extend your IP. To mention just one other real quick thing is with these design patents, if you're working in things like electronics industries, and so if you produce devices, a lot of them get copied very fast, and they get put up on Amazon and eBay and those sorts of things. So we've been able to have a lot of competitors that are producing similar devices, be able to have them taken down off folks like Amazon and those. And you really need some sort of registration to be able to do that.
All right. Let's see. So that brings us to trade. Okay, so one other thing that we wanted to mention that's very applicable to med tech is that A lot of the digital healthcare that's coming out, they tend to have graphic user interfaces for devices, your phones and what have you. That's also protectable under design patents. We wouldn't necessarily pursue utility patents because, if you're pushing a button and sending information, that's the core of the technology. However, the way that the user interfaces, be it a patient or the hospital or even the AI that's going to be interacting with all the information that you're sending, that can be, if it's a visual representation and it is unique to your product system or what have you, that can typically be pursued in a design patent to a certain extent, or sometimes even in a trade dress registration. So that brings us to a quick slide that's going to introduce some other applicable topics, but we're going over the difference between, you can pursue trademark protection before you start to use your trademark itself. So that's why the title of the slide is use versus an intent to use. Use type trademark applications, they're based on a first use that occurred already. Intent to use means that you have a bona fide intent to use the trademark in commerce. And the reason why we tend to, especially for small startups that are just getting their products going, we tend to advise to file an intent to use even if you've already started to advertise it. And the reason is that the overall cost at the end of the day between an intent to use and a use-based application is probably less than $200, because the extra step that you have to do at the end of an intent to use application is to show that you've started using it, and then there's a little fee that the government always takes. However, with an intent to use application, as the bottom says, you can clear examination before product launch. The last thing you want to do is spend all this money into packaging, branding, advertising, just to find out that there's some company somewhere that you had never heard of, that they have a registration and they send you a letter that says, sorry, it's ours, and so then you have to go back to the board, go back to your investors, go back to whoever's funding and say, we kind of didn't really clear the name of the product, so we have to go back to the drawing board. So that's why an intent to use is a real valuable tool. You use the examiners at the trademark office to clear the name of the product that you guys are wanting to push out onto the market. Let's see. Also, if you do an intent to use application, you can delay use. Once you get allowance, the examiner says you're great, it's all free and clear. You don't actually have to start using it for up to 3 years after you get that notice of allowance. Every 6 months, we have to file extensions, and there's a small fee, of course. It's about, like $200 or something, $100? I can't remember. Right in there, and you can just delay every 6 months up to 3 years from allowance. And if it turns out that you're not, there's some delay in product launch, whether it's FDA or investor money or what have you, you can always abandon and refile a trademark application. That's not the same as in patents where you have disclosure rules and things like that would eventually ban your application. So that brings us to platform technologies, and that'll be where.
Just one more quick thing on trademarks is from personal experience, if you are going to file for trademark applications and you're interested in your domain name, get your domain name before you file your trademark application. There are groups that watch the publications and things. So when the USPTO, they publish their gazette, and so they'll be publishing when marks after they've been filed. So I've seen that companies will purchase that domain name, and all of a sudden it'll be for sale for $9,999. Right. So just a quick tip. So a lot of the devices we kind of looked at are pretty much standalone devices. The sandal, the button. Button might have maybe a little bit broader with some trade dress. So sometimes there's a particular product where you're really only interested in protecting that invention, say an infusion pump or something. Other times there's going to, the idea of the product really fits into a larger scheme. So it fits into a larger, what we call platform technologies, so a bigger group of technologies, maybe with multiple commercial embodiments. So when you're starting up and launching your product, you might want to think about whether it is a sole product or whether it is a bigger part of what a platform technology would be. And there are different ways to cover the platforms. Maybe it'd be a method patent over the broader scale, and maybe some particular devices for your commercial embodiments. With platform technologies, you kind of want to think about what your business model is going to be as to how you're going to protect them, at least for the IP standpoint. If you have a platform technology and you're going to control everything in-house, maybe it's not so. Maybe you can lump some technologies together, maybe in a single broader patent application, and there's some things you can do to spin off multiple inventions from a very large application. But sometimes maybe the IP strategy is going to be to license the technology. So it could be that you have a platform technology. Maybe you're going to take one area, one commercial embodiment. Maybe it's a sensor or something, and you're going to do glucose sensing, and maybe it works for the skin patch sensors to determine the radiation from the sun or something. So as an IP standpoint, we'd like to look at what your business model is, because it could be that rather than one large, big, thick application with lots of things in it, maybe it'd be better to have a couple of smaller ones. And by doing that, maybe you could license the entire patent license different patents to different groups. Folks, when they are licensing inventions, they tend to like to license the entire patent and don't necessarily want to license a claim from a larger patent. So it's kind of nice when you have, if you're going to go to licensing, to be able to license the entire patent. So thinking something like that along your, so that kind of works into your business model of how it is you want to pursue these platform technologies. Another point is, I guess, expanding into unforeseen markets. If you have a larger technology, there could be other markets you're not completely aware of at the time. So if you're maybe thinking about whether you might be able to expand, that's something to think about a little bit early when we're preparing patent applications, because we might take a little bit different approach in the applications. And then, let's see, consider everything. Yeah, so sometimes you're going to develop your own device and sell it. Other times you're looking to be bought out by a large group, let's say. And so if you're looking really to sell the technology off, or to, I don't know, maybe you look for many non-exclusive licenses or so, it's a good idea to consider your strategy about keeping these patent families open. Patent, after it grants, it closes, right? So you get your patent and it's granted and you've got your ribbon and all that. But at that point, you're pretty much, for the most part, you're fixed on the scope of coverage. There are techniques you can file, things like continuations, and if you've done a little bit of extra work, you can file things like continuation in parts. So you can keep these patent families open, and the idea here is if the idea is going to be to try to sell this technology, it's good to have some possible additional scope beyond what it is you actually already have granted. So you can file things like continuation applications to other variations of the technology, or at least leave it open, so if you're going to sell it, someone else can explore it. Yeah.
And real quick, just to build off of that is, let's say the core technology was a sensor for whatever, we can use glucose or what have you. You never know. Somebody may adapt that technology to, let's say, the veterinarian industry, or to animal husbandry, where there's a certain level of a certain protein that means that the animal is fertile or is ready to produce a lot of milk, or who knows what it is. But and so if you're in the healthcare industry, you're not necessarily worrying about I mean, you are worried about animals because you have testing, but Abbott, or they have a big veterinary care industry, so you never know if an application will be licensed for two different populations, subjects, or even for in the United States versus Canada versus Mexico or Australia. So that's how we kind of evaluate our clients' goals and structure their IP towards that, and keep an eye out. We always try to keep an eye out for additional revenue streams that they may not have thought of.
Yeah, and I'll say one more thing about that. Okay. So just another thought is it could be that your platform technology isn't itself patentable. So it might have something to do with some sort of an algorithm that you're discovering. Maybe you're discovering epitopes on a compound, but maybe it really comes down to essentially an algorithm. So it could be maybe your platform technology is not itself patentable, and then maybe you're spinning off multiple inventions, say CDR regions, antibodies, or something for analyte detection or something. So there's different things to think about when you have the platform technologies. Okay. So I guess if there's one thing you would take out of this little presentation is patents give the right to exclude others from practicing inventions. They don't give you the right to practice the invention. We run into a lot of confusion of that when we're counseling clients. So patents give you the right to exclude others making, using, selling, offering for sale, or importing inventions. And again, they don't give you the right to practice the invention. The Patent Office, they do not, it's not the Office of Morality. They are only looking at inventions and whether they're new and useful over the art itself. So I'm going to switch to the next one. Yeah, so there are different reasons. Like I said, so inventions are going to look, the Patent Office is going to look where it's new and non-obvious to the state of the art. So they're going to assess the state of the art, look at the claims you're presenting, and determine whether those meet the burden or not. There are other reasons why you could not practice the invention, even if you got the patent. Among these would be different laws. If you're producing a composition that's there to treat somebody, a pharmaceutical, the FDA may have some interest in what it is you're doing. You do not want to necessarily, you may have a very elegant synthesis method, but that synthesis method may result in an explosive, which maybe the health and safety laws are not particularly interested in you pursuing either. So the idea is here, you want to take a look at both patentability and freedom to operate when launching your products, and think about how those are going to go overall in your overall scheme. And again, all these forms of IP work together. There's trade secrets, there's patents, copyrights we didn't have time to get into, but there's some ways to work that into, and also trademarks and logos, brand names, and importantly, we've had really good success working with trade dress. So questions? We have Ask the IP Attorney later. We'll give you lots of free advice, but don't tell me your exact invention.
Before you guys leave, let's do this.